why did you want to be a disc jockey?
Because the alternative was working in Liverpool, in amongst the chimneys and the grime, which I tried for a while after I left the St Bede's Secondary Modern Training School for Criminals.
At a young age?
At a very young age, and went into a bakery and started scraping sausage roll trays. You know the gunge that comes out of sausage rolls when they're on a tray in the bakery?
Rather tasty, I would think.
Yes, lovely job. I had the job of scraping the gunge off the trays. So as I was sitting there in between the baking sun and the baking oven, scraping away, I thought, yikes, I can't do this for the next 60 years. So one day when trolling on the beach, I heard this station on my tranny playing nothing but records, which was very unusual in those days.
I remember it well. Which one was this?
This was Caroline North.
Ah, yeah.
Yes. And I thought, wow, people having fun on the air, how unusual. Because on the BBC up to then, they never had fun. It was all sort of, and now here's a record. We're terribly sorry about playing this record. We don't really want to play this record, but here it is.
It's classical anyway.
Yes. And these guys were just going, wow, look, a seagull's landed on the aerial, and sound effects of sea and having fun. And I thought, wow, that sounds like a good job. So I aimed my sights in that direction.
Were there any amazing or fascinating, dreadful, ghastly moments or wonderful things you can remember about your time at the BBC?
No.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Kenny Everett.
That was a slight terrific moment.
Which was this?
That was, well, I used to do the programme before Michael Aspel's, what's that thing all around the world? Two-Way Family Favourites. And he used to come on at 12 o'clock, exactly after the last pip, and say, the time in London is 12 o'clock. In Hong Kong, it's 5. In San Francisco, it's something. But all over the place, it's time for Two-Way Family Favourites. Oh, it sounded better than that. But his bit went all around the world. All the BBC transmitters all over the world used to just suddenly switch into him at 12 o'clock.
So he could never answer back anything you said, or
right. So only Britain heard me and him.
Right.
So before 12, I used to say, oh, here she comes. Oh, oh, look, a new handbag. Oh, I say, a camp. Oh, look, what do you call them things?
Earrings.
Earrings, yes. That proves I'm not camp, you see. I don't know the lingo.
That's because you wear them through your toes.
And all like that. And, oh, look, seamed stockings. Nice. Oh, and she's seating herself down by the microphone. Oh, yes, final touch of eyeliner. Yes, she's coming to her big moment. And then the pips would come. And he'd come on and have to go, the time in Britain is 12 o'clock. And so I used to really do dreadful things to him that way. One day, when I was leaving the BBC, voluntarily, funnily enough, one time, he said, at 12 o'clock after all my campery and goodbye everybody, he came on and said, ladies and gentlemen around the world, I must just tell you something. There's this small person who's on before me, and for the last 12 months he's been taking the merciful pee out of me, and I'm going to do something about it now. And he read this lovely long poem about how wacky I was and how he was going to miss me and all that. It was very sweet, and it was one of those that went diddly-diddly-dee, diddly-diddly-dee, diddly-diddly-diddly-diddly-diddly-diddly-diddly-diddly-diddly-diddly-dee, and rhymed right at the end.
Perfect and brilliant, as all Mike Aspel would be.
Of course. But he'll probably remember the actual poem.
Yes, of course I remember that poem well. It went diddly 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 diddly, and it rhymed. It was very beautiful, actually. The funny thing is that Kenny Everett and I hardly ever met. We would occasionally meet in a lift, and we'd say, oh, then the lift would stop and we'd get out. Funny sort of life. I reckon that Kenny Everett and Alistair Cook are probably the two best and most idiosyncratic broadcasters in the world. Though I wouldn't dream of telling him that. Even worse than what he used to do to me on Family Favourites was what he did when he discovered, when I joined Capital, that Gene Metcalfe and I had once done a voice improvement record, like you too can have a voice like this, years ago, with me saying, it was a teak table, and a sn as in snow, and things like that. And he found it, and that was the end of me. Actually, Kenny and I made a record together a year or so ago. It was on the subject of love. It was just a conversation piece. And I remember reminiscing about a girl called Margaret Parnell, and he reminisced about some old bag he knew. And I said, I loved her deeply. And he said, mine never had a deeply. Dirty little git.
Tell us a bit about your early background with your parents and your family and so on. It was in Liverpool, correct?
Yes, we lived in a back-to-back. We lived in the back bit.
The back.
That didn't have a front. And we had a garden about the size of a small piece of grass. And I think we had a flower or two and a hedge around it, and that was the garden.
And what did your parents do, work-wise?
Nothing in the garden.
Nothing if they could help it.
No, he used to drive a tug.
What about your mum?
She didn't. She used to cook terribly. She cooked bacon that the government almost commissioned to make warships out of. She knew more ways to murder an egg than any woman alive. I don't know how I managed to grow up. Mind you, I didn't really. I'm still pixie-ish.
Yeah, perhaps that's why you're rather small.
Yes.
Small in stature. Have you brothers and sisters?
I got one sister. She married Marks and Spencer's.
Ah, and is she doing well there?
Well, she didn't. She's not in the store. She married a man who makes the shirts in Milan.
Do you see any of your family these days?
No. I pop up every now and then to see they're all right, because they moved. They moved.
Where does it...
Slightly to the left.
Now, the reason I think you're what you are today is because you're not really a disc jockey. What you tend to do is you tend to use the media for your own purposes to create effects.
And checks.
Yeah, exactly. Large checks. Larger the better, right? No, but looking at the sort of the things you do, how do you regard yourself? I mean, do you regard yourself as a creative artist? Or do you regard yourself as a parasite?
Oh, a parasite, definitely. Oh, yes, I'm definitely going to agree with that. That's like when you get a form through from the government, say, when you apply to become a driver, they send you a thing saying, are you blind? I mean, you're definitely going to put yes, aren't you? Do you think you are good enough to drive? Oh, no.
Yeah, anyway, well, all right then. What do you do? I mean, describe what you do.
I get up as late as possible, as absolutely as late as I possibly can. Lee usually gets me up, that's my wife, by making coffee smells rave up the stairs and around me hooter. Usually, after brekkie, I pop into the studio here, which is full of equipment, studio equipment, funnily enough, and I do a jingle or two for Nicky Orn or somebody, and then I'll do an advert, which brings in enough money to keep the electricity flowing so I can do more jingles and adverts.
Right. What about things like Captain Kremen? Does that take ages and ages? Because it always sounds as though it's meant to. It sounds easy, but it's probably incredibly difficult.
Well, what I actually do with that is leave it to the last minute. Friday night at 8 o'clock, I ring up Chris Denning and say, "Oi, Chris, got any gags for this week's show?" Like, it was so cold last night that one of my twin beds got in with the other one.
Oh dear.
I tell you, the rocket ship was so cold, every time I opened the door the light went on.
Oh no.
It was so windy last night, a red light went through a car. And here's one I actually used. It was so cold. Look at the thermometer, it says continued on the next thermometer. Any road up. Once I've got me gags, I sit down at a typewriter and rattle out the story, and by the time 10 o'clock rolls around, I'll go and have a drink and forget the whole thing until the next morning at about 7 o'clock in the morning. I wander down here into the studio and look at the script and go, yes, it's all right, I'll correct a bit here, alter a bit there, and then get with me machines and me records of sound effects and everything and actually do it. And usually I finish it around about 10 to 10, which is just enough time to gather me bits and me tapes and stuff, and the finished episode, and rush out to the car and pelt it to the studio in London, which is 82 miles away, and I arrive at about 5 to 12, and start, and then at 10 past 1 it goes out.
And there you are, with a Captain Kremen episode finished and on the air.
Just about, yeah.
Oh, that's marvellous. Last minute stuff, then.
Yes, it's the last minuteness of it that makes me do it, really. Because if I had all week, I'd just sort of go, oh, I don't feel like doing it now, I'll wait.
You think it almost gains its sparkle from being recorded
Oh, yes.
with a desperate
The
thanks.
British are best with their backs up against the wall. What?